Former Managing Director of Graphic Communications, Ken Ashigbe, is calling on the National Media Commission Chairman to recuse himself from a case brought before the Commission involving government and multimedia over JoyNews' documentary Militia in the Heart of the Nation. Government filed a formal complaint with the NMC with the documentary, which it claims is bad-mouthing its administration.
This particular point in time in our life, the reason why your worry has massive credence is that you have the chairperson of the Media Commission being a representative of the president. Yeah. And for me, it sins against the spirit and the letter of our constitution. It is an issue that it has been agitating my mind when that happened, that this is an issue that maybe we should go to court to really test it. I worry in this particular case, and I'm hoping that in terms of the paneling for this particular case, the chairperson of the Media Commission, who is government representative, would not sit on the panel. Neither would he sit on plenary when these issues come up, because it's an anathema, for us to have the case that this institution that is supposed to create the insulation is currently now being headed by the president.
Ken Ashigbe speaking earlier on the AM show. Here in Accra, the Ghana Journalists Association has been celebrating the day with a seminar on the brutalities suffered by journalists in the course of their work. You recall our own Natif Idris, who was assaulted by the police whilst covering a demonstration at the police headquarters. Afilmoni is GJA president, and he says this should not deter journalists.
Well, Press Freedom Day provides an opportunity to synergize our efforts and sharpen our weapons to deal surgically with the calcifying cancer of impunity, which fuels the attacks and threats against journalists with scandalous frequency. The latest of such threats faced the Star FM reporter in Bogatanga, whose investigative work caused the job of a Minister of State at the presidency, my own friend Roxin Bukari. We doff our hats for the character erection and moral perfection of the reporter who refused to help of Abel Swale in the most tragic circumstances will inflict a national harm of incalculable proportions. We must not and dare not allow this to happen. The GJ welcomes wholeheartedly government's planned intervention on safety mechanisms for journalists. The timing is perfect and the response concrete. Without wrestling with doubt, we hope and pray that this intervention will take off as planned. We also embrace government's capacity building initiative for journalists. The point can hardly be articulated that the capacity of journalists is fundamental to their ability to perform satisfactorily. The GJ will complement these initiatives with ethical training programs to be supported by MTN to help cure the cancerous spread of ethical bankruptcy.
GJA President Afilmoni there. For his part, NMC Chairman Yaboidu Ayabuafo admonished journalists not to become stooges when they take on political issues.
The over-concentration of political activists in almost every program that we run, irrespective of their competence and their capacity to understand and appreciate the issues that we are discussing, is becoming so dysfunctional that the time has come for us to discourage that. Now, when there are matters of public interest, we should invite people who are knowledgeable in the subject matter so that we have objective discussions and not cacophonic support loyalty. I mean, sometimes very uninformed loyalty. What we look for is the fact that no matter who started it, no matter who concluded it, we have put it to effective use. Not that because I did not start it, I will not make it useful, and so our money is thrown away. The money that we invest in all those projects are monies that belong to the good people of this country. It does not belong to people who are in political leadership. And if indeed it were their own money, they will not waste it the way that we have been wasting some of their resources. And these are the issues that we should speak to as Ghanaian journalists. So it is only when we speak like that that we can inform the people and tell them how we need to hold. Because one of the mandates that have been given to us in the Constitution is the fact that we have to hold government accountable to the people of this country. But when we take sides on partisan basis, we not only lose our professionalism,
losing professionalism to politics there. That's the NMC's chairman. Well, my colleague Manasseh Azariawene is here with me in the studio. We'll talk about journalism and free speech. We'll connect with my colleagues who are not at work, Emmanuel Ante and Latif Idrisu, who have been beaten before and are still living with the repercussions of those actions. Manasseh, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So shall we say this is our day?
Well, it is our day, but often it reminds...
Not our day, our day.
Our day. This doesn't come with food. It only reminds us of some of the bad things that happen to us, but I think we should also take the time to recount our contribution to society.
And it helps us to take stock. I'm going to connect to Emmanuel Ante shortly, but Manasseh, I want you to tell us, for you, who does investigative pieces, who has done a lot of very high-profile investigative work, how does it feel for you to celebrate World Press Freedom Day in Ghana?
Well, over the years, it has been very good news until recently, when a lot of things started happening, when journalists were beaten. We saw an unfortunate assassination of one of our own. And it looks like the terrain is increasingly becoming hostile. And for me, it calls for serious concern and action from all parties involved in this trade. I mean, those of us in the media and also the regulators and even the government, because if you look at our rankings, for the first time in a long time, we have slipped to third. I think 1 or 2 occasions in the past 10 years. We went to number 2, but we are number 3. And if
you mean in Africa?
In Africa, yes.
Why? Because in the world we are somewhere at 23, from 23 to 27 at the moment. Okay, so you think that the terrain is becoming more and more hostile. I'd like for you to talk to us about why you think we are where we are. But let me connect quickly to Emmanuel Ante, who is on the line now. Emmanuel Ante, this was in about 2012. He was he got caught up in a crowd of NPP supporters who beat him up and left him with a waist problem, I must say. Emmanuel joins us on the line right now from hospital, where he has gone for a review. Hello, Emmanuel.
Hello, Gigi.
So, how long ago? It's been 6 years since your attack?
Yeah, 6, 7 years, yeah.
6, 7 years, roughly. On World Press Freedom Day today, how does it feel for you to be a journalist?
Well, it brings back sadness. When you think about the fact that they are celebrating World Press Freedom Day, and yet they're not doing what would help Mother Ghana grow. I mean, it's so disturbing and so worrying, especially if you've been through stuff that some of us have been, if you've been through stuff that some of us have faced. When it gets to these points, I mean, all the time, you're really sometimes distraught because when you remember the things that happened and why you were doing what you were doing, and then that thing happened to you, it's so discouraging, yeah. So sad. Let me put that.
And then every year we'll have to celebrate this. So what it means is that every year you go through a cycle of reliving all the things that happen. But does it in any way deter you from doing journalistic work, Emmanuel?
Well, to be frank with you, as you already know, now I am not able to go out as I used to. I'm not able to do the kind of things that I used to do. Because sometimes you want to do it and then you're reminded by what happened to you, and then so you tend to be a bit laid back. But you can't stop it. I mean, if you do this with the passion that some of us do, I mean, you can't stop it. But it's just that probably it brings down your vim just a little bit.
But we're talking about bringing down your, the enthusiasm as far as doing journalistic work is concerned. Yesterday there was a forum from stakeholders, and at this forum a lot of people spoke, including a representative for the police. He said that one of the things that we can do as journalists is to prioritize our safety ahead of before the story itself. That's one thing. Another thing is for journalists to be clearly identified in such protests or when there are mass programs they're covering. Do you feel, based on your experience, because you were covering a mass program just like this, do you feel that that is the way to deal with the problem?
I would say two ways. I mean, it is part of the solution, and I would say no. Let me explain why I said so. In terms of the identification, to be frank with you, identification, some of these people that perpetrate these things knows some of us who have been around, and we've been covering some of their programs and all that. So they know us. In my situation, for instance, the guy shouted from the crowd and said, yes, this one is from multimedia in Chi. They were saying this one is multimedia. It's from multimedia. It's from multimedia. We know him. Before they started, they pounced on me and then started picking me up. So some of them, they do know us, but because of what they have in mind or the intention they have, they come to you and they try to attack you.
So whether or not you are identifying yourself as as a media person, won't stop them from doing what they want to do anyway.
No. Once they have that notion in mind or that plan in mind that this is what we want to do, we want to do this to do that to prevent that or to solve this particular problem for us. Not for any other person or for the general well-being of everyone, but just for their own personal interest, they will do it. It doesn't matter where you are coming from, whether they see you or not. Okay. The only thing that probably might deter them a bit, if a policeman or a security person is around you, is around where you are, then they might be very cautious. Now, the other thing that I think can help about our security, in my situation, for instance, when we got to the NPP headquarters and we saw what was happening, we were even chased with machetes and all that. And so when we got to Obrasport and the thing was happening, as a journalist, I mean, definitely your intuition will set in, and then you will try to go and get the information or what you're seeing. I couldn't have come to the office without bringing a story when I'm seeing something that I think I can record. So I opted that I told them we should stop and capture the demonstration going on there. But my cameraman, who is Bright Champon then, and then my driver, because of what we saw at the NPP headquarters, they decided not to stay. They said, no, they can't go. We should.
And you decided to brave the odds and go ahead with it.
Exactly. Because by then we're giving some iPhone, if you could remember, iPhone that we can take the shots and then.
So you had your phone, you were going to, even though the camera technician and the driver had decided that they wouldn't be a part of it, you went ahead with your phone trying to capture the moment, and then this happened.
Precisely. So with that, if I had listened to them and then we all went to the office or we came to the office at the time, maybe this wouldn't have happened to me. But my instinct was not allowing me to just leave what I was
Your
seeing
journalistic instincts just pushed you right ahead to get the story.
Exactly, exactly.
Well, Alfemoni is saying that instead of making your journalistic instincts push you to get the story, prioritize your safety first.
You know, it's easy to say this, Gifty. It's easy to say this if you are sitting by the side or behind watching. But if you are on the field, it's very difficult to say you are seeing something, a newsworthy action
and walk
taking
away.
place, and then you walk past and say, "Oh, I'm thinking of my safety and I'm going." No,
okay.
Even when you're running away, you will try to get the story, at least get something that you can report on.
So it's easier said than done. You put it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Emmanuel, thank you very much for your thoughts on this. If I could just take a very quick, short message for journalists who have been attacked as well, and any advice that you have for journalists going forward.
Well, it's difficult to even say you're advising someone when your situation, you yourself, you have not been able to solve your own or advise your own self to do.
Well, you have the experience, so you can share some quick advice with people.
If I can say anything, or anything I can say, or something that I can say a little bit that can help other journalists, is that probably, like Alfemoni is saying, maybe even though your journalistic instinct is kicking in, at least think about it. Maybe move away, far away from the scene, and then try to see if you have the camera that you can zoom in, then you do it from there.
Okay.
But if not, just stay back, and probably if you have a contact or you know someone from there, or try to get someone that you can get a contact from, and then call back to get the information. I think that would rather help than trying to push yourself into the story and then try to get the story.
And
I think that
hit
will
in
not
the
help.
process. Simano, thank you very much, and I wish you all the best with the hospital checkups that you're doing at the moment. Emmanuel Ante is one of the producers for this show, by the way, I must say, and he was attacked by NPP, a group of NPP persons, whilst he was covering their program at the Obra Sports. This is 6-7 years ago. He's still living with the scars, not just the scars. He's actually living with the pain of those years now. Manasseh Azuri Awene is here with me. He's an investigative journalist. He's come under several, he's had several death threats. Manasseh, do you want to share with us some of these experiences?
Well, I must also say the very week Emmanuel Ante was attacked, myself and a crew from the multimedia group were also nearly lynched in front of Nana Akufo-Addo's residence. Yes, the president of Benin, Yaya Boni, had come because of the tension. So he went to former President Rawlings' house, went to former President Kufuor's house, then we're going to Nana Akufo-Addo's house. So as soon as we got, it was a convoy, but we were in a multimedia branded vehicle. As soon as we got to the entrance, you know, there were party supporters chanting. So when they saw the multimedia colors, they came with stones, clubs, started hitting. Our luck was that soldiers and police were there in their numbers. So they surrounded our vehicles and then shepherded us to the Nima police station. So later, we were escorted by the police. And then when we got to a safe distance, we were allowed to come to our office. So it was one scary moment, but our car had a lot of dents. And I must also say that attack, or those attacks, came because the NPP at the time was contesting the 2012 election results. And the multimedia group, our election headquarters, which is very credible, was able to call the election in favor of the NDC, which eventually became the case. At the time, the NPP accused us of preparing the minds of Ghanaians for the Reagan. So that's how dangerous, that's the background to what the fate Emmanuel Ante suffered and what we also nearly suffered.
And speaking of that, right, in 2016, I had just returned from London from school, and I had to cover, because I had been presidential correspondent for at the time that the NDC was in government. I had gone to cover something that was happening at the NDC party headquarters, and at this time, again in 2016, you know how the situation
exactly. We also called in favor of
at this time.
NPP.
There's I'm there with a multimedia branded vehicle with my crew, and again there were party supporters there, and it certainly was the same situation. You know, the moment they see you, they start hurling insults at you and they start coming at you. So they start hitting our vehicle. And I said, look, I'm not going to stay there and take any of this. So I sit in the car and I said, let's go back to the office. So I guess this is the point that Afromoney is making, that do not prioritize the story over your life. People have also said that, well, journalism is about courage. This is the terrain. If you want to tell the stories that change people's lives, you are going to have to go beyond yourself. Where do you stand on this?
I stand in the middle because whatever story you do, if it does not please someone, they will take offense. There's nobody who would smile at you if you told them they had a bad breath, even if that's the truth. So once the truth does not favor someone, they are likely to react in a negative way. But as civilized beings, the Constitution mandates us to behave in a certain way or react in a certain way. You can sue the person, you can take the person to NMC. There are legal redresses which are available to people who feel aggrieved by the work we do. So I don't think it is an option for people to want to hurt the journalist. No matter what, the question is, how careful can you be? Sometimes we have situations of war, violent demonstrations. So for such situations, you are advised to go and then not be where they pelt stones or do other things. But
from a safe distance.
Yes, but with investigative reports, with reports on scandals, with things that would make society better, people are still going to be hurt. So in that case, we cannot say we should avoid doing the things that will change our society just because somebody will hurt us. And if you look at this branding that ACP Oklu is talking about, from these experiences, it is even clear that sometimes if you identify yourself with your brand,
that's even when you're more exposed to danger.
You're more exposed, because recently when we did the militia documentary, for instance, our colleague who was covering the proceedings of the Commission of Inquiry actually said those national security guys at the castle came charging, were the multimedia guys. So he had to take off his tag, put it in his pocket, and they said, well, the multimedia people had left. So I don't think we should begin to encourage people psychologically that, well, the journalist has to do this, or if they are at this position and they are hurt, they called for it. I think we should begin to push the frontiers. And when we talk about freedom, it is not only about the journalists, but the culture of silence is creeping back into our society in a number of ways. If you took your microphone to town to do a story critical of a particular government policy, you are likely to encounter very credible sources with good information or education who will tell you, look, I'm not going to speak because when I speak it does not favor party A or party B, they are going to come heavily at me. I did a documentary, I visited 53 assemblies, and not one coordinating director spoke to me. That they had to get clearance from the local government ministry before they could speak. So all of this goes to add to the fact that, well, the media is free to some extent, but we need that freedom for everybody in the society so people can express themselves and also contribute meaningfully to the discussions and national discourse, so that it doesn't always become the politicians who have the freedom to speak on any subject and not be targeted or hurt in any way.
And look, the culture of silence is something nobody wants to encourage in any country. The culture of silence can really break you down. It breaks you internally. That's what it does. So certainly something we don't want to encourage. And that's why you and I should all support the work of journalists, because without us, all the politicians would do is take you for granted. All the politicians would do is walk all over you. And so you know the importance of our work. But we need to be alive to be able to do that. Manasseh, it's been an interesting conversation. Is there any final words you want to share with our viewers based on your experience as we commemorate World Press Freedom Day?
Well, what I will say is add to what you have just said, because we have to support the media, we have to support free speech. If you look at what is happening in our society today, the media is about the last hope. The state institutions that are mandated to solve our problems and also hold the government accountable are all not doing what they are supposed to do. So,
and most of them are under the control of the government
anyway. So if we allow the media to be called into submission, then we are just going to fold our arms and watch the politicians be on the football pitch of our nation and do whatever they have to do. So we need to support the media, and I also support the call that as journalists we should also be at our responsible best, because one of the worst things that can happen to media freedom is to exercise that freedom irresponsibly.
Manasseh, thank you very much. And so happy World Press Freedom Day to us. We hope that we'll be in a good position to do what we do best and to help this country.